She did anything because of her deep love. In this story, we dive into a chilling case that shocked an entire village and left a mark on history. It's a tale of love, betrayal, and unimaginable decisions that took a horrifying turn. This story follows the lives of Shabnam and Salim, two individuals whose actions changed everything forever. If you enjoy hearing gripping and thought-provoking stories, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to stay updated with more such content. Now, let's uncover the unsettling truth behind this tragic case. Today, we delve into one of the most chilling and horrifying stories that still lingers in people's memories for its shocking brutality. While the world celebrates tales of true love that stand the test of time, this love story remains etched in history for all the wrong reasons. This is the tale of Shabnam and Salim, two individuals whose twisted choices turned their love into a nightmare. The very mention of this story continues to send shivers down the spines of those who hear it. Prepare yourselves, because as the events unfold, you'll be left utterly speechless. This case rattled the entire Uttar Pradesh administration and shocked the nation for days. The year was 2008, and the village of Bawankedi, located in Amroha district, was like any other small village in Uttar Pradesh, quiet, close-knit, and unassuming. It was a seemingly ordinary night between April 14th and 15th. A strange stillness had spread across the village as most of the residents lay fast asleep, wrapped in the comfort of their slumber. Suddenly, at around 2 a.m., a piercing scream tore through the silence, shaking those who were awake enough to hear it. At first, people dismissed the noise as a trick of the night, perhaps an animal or a distant argument, but the cries grew louder and more distinct. Something wasn't right. The source of the sound was soon traced to the house of Shaukat Ali, the wealthiest and most respected man in the village. Shaukat Ali, a well-regarded college lecturer, lived in the largest and most luxurious house in Bawankedi. Hearing the desperate cries echoing from the mansion, villagers rushed toward the property, unsure of what they might find. Outside, they were greeted by a scene of chaos. Shabnam Ali, Shaukat's daughter, stood trembling and wailing inconsolably. Her screams echoed off the walls, haunting those who watched. Bewildered and alarmed, some villagers mustered the courage to step inside and uncover the truth. What awaited them was a sight straight out of a nightmare. Shabnam, with tears streaming down her face, pointed toward her father's room. What they discovered in that room would remain etched in their memories forever. Inside, Shaukat Ali lay sprawled across his bed, motionless and soaked in blood. The air was thick with the metallic smell of death. The villagers, in a state of disbelief and panic, continued their search through the other rooms of the house, hoping to make sense of the horror. Instead, their worst fears were confirmed. Everywhere they looked, death loomed. The other family members lay lifeless in their respective places, their bodies bearing the brutal marks of a violent attack. The magnitude of the crime was unfathomable. 7 members of Shaukat Ali's family had been slaughtered in cold blood that night. Among the deceased were Shaukat Ali himself, age 55, along with his 50-year-old wife, who was Shabnam's mother, Shabnam's elder brother Anish, younger brother Rashid, and sister-in-law Anjum, had all met the same tragic fate. Adding to the heartbreak, Shabnam's maternal cousin Rabia and her 10-month-old nephew, baby Arsh, were also counted among the dead. The gruesome and senseless killing of an infant shook the village to its core. How could anyone be capable of such unimaginable cruelty? The chilling realization that no one in the house had been spared sent shockwaves throughout the village. Word of the massacre spread like wildfire, reaching the authorities and the media within hours. The police, stunned by the sheer scale of the tragedy, immediately launched an investigation into the case that was destined to reveal dark secrets no one could have anticipated. Questions swirled around the village. Who could commit such a barbaric act? And why had an entire family been wiped out so mercilessly? Unbeknownst to the villagers, the answers to these questions would point to a tale of forbidden love, betrayal. The scene inside Shaukat Ali's house was beyond comprehension. The lifeless bodies, the blood-stained floors, and the eerie silence gripped everyone with fear and confusion. The only question echoing in everyone's mind was, who could commit such a heinous crime? All eyes turned to the lone survivor, Shabnam, Shaukat Ali's daughter. Shabnam, however, appeared utterly shattered. Her grief-stricken condition rendered her unable to speak or explain what had happened. Villagers, overcome with shock and sympathy, gathered around her, attempting to console her. After all, she had lost not just... The news reached the highest levels of the state government. At the time, Mayawati was serving as the chief minister of Uttar Pradesh. Upon learning about the gruesome incident, she swiftly responded by announcing a compensation of 5 lakh rupees for Shabnam, the lone surviving member of the family. Her government also issued a firm statement declaring that no stone would be left unturned in bringing the perpetrators to justice. Mayawati's announcement, however, failed to quell the storm. The scale and brutality of the massacre were such that it quickly became a political issue. Opposition parties seized the opportunity to criticize the ruling government, turning the tragedy into a heated debate on law and order. Questions were raised about the safety of citizens and the government's failure to prevent such gruesome crimes. Amidst the political uproar, the villagers of Bawankedi remained stunned and fearful. As the forensic team continued their investigation and the police ramped up their efforts, whispers and doubts began to emerge. Was this really the work of dacoits, or was there something far more sinister lurking beneath the surface? No one could have predicted the dark revelations that were about to unfold. Recognizing the gravity and public outrage surrounding the case, Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Mayawati wasted no time in taking action. The very next day, she arrived at the village of Bawankedi in a helicopter, personally visiting the site of the massacre. Her presence drew a large crowd as villagers gathered to catch a glimpse of the leader. Standing before the devastated Shabnam, Mayawati once again reiterated her government's stance. Those responsible for this brutal crime would be given the strictest punishment. She assured Shabnam that the 5 lakh rupees compensation she had announced would soon be delivered to her. However, not everyone was quick to support this decision. Among those skeptical was Inspector R.P. Gupta, the lead officer investigating the case. Understanding the complexities of the incident, Gupta approached Mayawati with a cautious request to delay the compensation until the post-mortem reports provided further clarity. Mayawati, acknowledging the seriousness of the situation, agreed. With the investigation now fully underway, Inspector Gupta turned his focus to the crime scene, meticulously examining every detail. Each bloodstain, misplaced object, and locked door told a silent story, but none provided immediate answers. It was time to question Shabnam, the sole survivor, who held the key to unraveling this mystery. During the initial interrogation, Shabnam calmly recounted her story. She insisted that she had been sleeping on the roof of the house that night and was awakened by strange noises. By the time she came downstairs, the attackers, allegedly robbers, were fleeing the scene with axes in hand. Her explanation seemed plausible at first glance, but Inspector Gupta wasn't entirely convinced. One question loomed large in his mind: how did Shabnam survive when every other family member perished? His doubts only deepened when he observed the crime scene more closely. The absence of any signs of struggle on the beds where the victims lay raised further suspicions. How could 7 people be killed so easily without resistance? Despite their doubts, the authorities treaded carefully. The sensitive nature of the case and Shabnam's apparent grief made it impossible to voice suspicions publicly. They chose instead to wait for the results of the post-mortem examinations. All 7 bodies were transported to the local hospital, where a team of experienced forensic doctors performed detailed autopsies. Hours later, the post-mortem findings revealed a startling detail. None of the victims showed any signs of physical struggle. This suggested that the family members were either unconscious or fast asleep when the fatal blows to their necks were delivered. For the investigators, this was both puzzling and deeply unsettling. To confirm their suspicions, additional tissue samples were sent for biopsy and toxicology tests. Days later, the reports arrived and the findings sent shockwaves through the investigative team. Traces of poison were discovered in the bodies of all the deceased. This revelation changed the entire direction of the case. The poison explained why there were no signs of struggle. It incapacitated the victims, leaving them defenseless against the brutal attack that followed. Now the question was no longer just about who wielded the weapon, but who poisoned the family in the first place, and why had such careful planning gone into this horrifying act. As the sole survivor, Shabnam naturally remained at the center of the investigation. Her calm demeanor and survival increasingly appeared suspicious to the officials, yet the police hesitated to confront her directly. The tragedy had already drawn immense public and political scrutiny, and a misstep could complicate the situation further. Inspector Gupta and his team knew they needed to proceed methodically. A web of secrets had begun to unravel, but the answers they sought would lead them down a darker path than anyone could have imagined. What initially appeared to be a robbery gone wrong was now beginning to resemble a meticulously orchestrated crime. The police, determined to proceed methodically, adopted a cautious approach to the investigation. Their first move was to retrieve Shabnam's call records, hoping to uncover any hidden connections or inconsistencies. What they found, however, stunned them. The records revealed that on the night of the massacre, Shabnam had made 52 calls to a single number. The frequency of these calls raised immediate suspicion. A quick investigation of the number traced it to a man named Salim, someone entirely unknown to the police at that stage. With this new lead, the focus of the inquiry shifted. Who was Salim, and why had Shabnam been in such constant contact with him that night? The police wasted no time and began their search for Salim. Simultaneously, they resumed questioning Shabnam about the events leading up to the murders. Shabnam reiterated her earlier claim that unknown attackers had entered the house via the roof and killed her family members. However, the police soon realized that her statement didn't hold water. Upon inspecting the crime scene, they found that the door to the staircase leading to the roof was locked from the inside. This detail contradicted Shabnam's story and raised further doubts about her account. If the attackers had truly come through the roof, how had they managed to lock the door behind them? The investigators also took a closer look at the house's layout, especially the height of the roof. The drop from the roof to the ground was a steep 14 feet, and the walls were plastered smooth, making any unauthorized climbing nearly impossible. For a brief moment, the theory emerged that the attackers might have used an external staircase or ladder to scale the walls. However, a thorough search of the property and surrounding area yielded no evidence to support this claim. It became increasingly clear to the police that Shabnam's version of events was riddled with contradictions and fabrications. As suspicions around Shabnam grew, the police chose to tread carefully, understanding the sensitive nature of the case. They refrained from taking any drastic steps or accusing her outright, fearing that acting without concrete evidence could derail the investigation. The turning point came when an unexpected tip arrived from a local reporter. The reporter urged the police to bring Salim in for questioning, suggesting that Salim held the key to unlocking the mystery. The reporter's statement aligned perfectly with what the police had already discovered in Shabnam's call records. Salim's name had surfaced twice now. It was enough for the investigators to refocus their attention. Salim was questioned once before, in the early days following the murders. However, at that time, there was little evidence linking him directly to the crime, and his statement seemed harmless. The police, lacking grounds for further detainment, had released him. But with mounting suspicion and new details emerging, Salim was summoned for questioning again on April 17, 2008. This time, the interrogation was more intense. Salim, visibly nervous, began offering inconsistent and shaky responses. The more pressure the police applied, the more cracks began to appear in his story. His demeanor shifted, and he struggled to maintain his composure. As the interrogation progressed, Salim's resolve crumbled under the weight of the questioning. His nervousness turned to panic, and finally, unable to bear the pressure any longer, he broke down. The truth that he revealed stunned the investigators and sent shockwaves through the police department. What he confessed not only exposed the dark underbelly of this seemingly straightforward case, but also unveiled a chilling plot that no one could have anticipated. Salim's words were about to turn this investigation on its head and unravel. After days of relentless investigation, the police finally broke through the silence when Salim made a chilling confession. He admitted to being the one who had brutally murdered Shabnam's entire family. To substantiate his claim, Salim handed over the hatchet he had used as the murder weapon. The blood-stained tool, now a crucial piece of evidence, left no room for doubt. When pressed about his motives, Salim revealed a shocking twist. He had carried out the murders on Shabnam's instructions. His statement sent shockwaves through the investigators, prompting them to summon Shabnam once again for further questioning. When confronted with Salim's confession, Shabnam flatly denied any involvement. Maintaining her innocence, she claimed she had no connection with Salim and insisted she hadn't asked him to commit the murders. The police, however, despite these obstacles, Shabnam remained determined to marry Salim. In a bold move, she decided to speak to her father, Shaukat Ali, about her relationship. Hoping for understanding, she expressed her desire to marry Salim. However, her father's reaction was far from what she had hoped. Shaukat Ali deeply hurt and angered, firmly rejected the proposal. He saw no future for his highly educated daughter with someone of Salim's status. The rest of the family, too, echoed Shaukat's disapproval. For days, the matter became a point of contention in the household, with the family urging Shabnam to reconsider. But Shabnam, resolute in her love, refused to back down. The constant tension took a toll on Shabnam. As days passed, she realized that her family would never agree to the marriage. Their rejection planted a dangerous idea in her mind. Frustrated and desperate, she met Salim to devise a plan that would eliminate all barriers to their union. The plan was as shocking as it was horrifying. They would kill Shabnam's entire family. By doing so, not only could they be together without opposition, but they would also inherit Shaukat Ali's substantial wealth and property. The gravity of their intentions didn't deter either of them. Salim, fully complicit, agreed to move forward. He soon purchased poison from the market and handed it over to Shabnam. Days passed as Shabnam waited for the perfect opportunity to execute their sinister plan. On the evening of April 14th, 2008, Shabnam saw her chance. Her brothers, who were usually away, had returned home. Pretending to care for them, she sweetly advised her family not to go out that evening, suggesting they all have dinner together. Touched by her affection, both brothers agreed and stayed. That night, Shabnam prepared dinner with her cousin Rabia. She served the meal with warmth, showing no hint of the monstrous intentions lurking beneath her calm demeanor. As the family finished their dinner and began relaxing, Shabnam offered to make tea. "Who wants tea?" she asked innocently. The entire family, oblivious to her deadly plan, cheerfully responded, "We all will." It was a seemingly normal moment of familial bonding. Shabnam proceeded to the kitchen, her hands steady as she brewed the tea. Before serving it, she quietly added the poison Salim had given her. Without hesitation, she returned to the living room and served the poisoned tea to every family member. Within moments of drinking the tea, the effects of the poison began to manifest. Family members started feeling unwell and slowly retreated to their rooms, believing they were merely exhausted. The poison worked swiftly, and soon the house fell into complete silence as everyone succumbed to its effects. At this point, Shabnam felt no remorse. Her mind remained focused on the next phase of their horrific plan. She picked up the phone and called Salim, instructing him to come to the house immediately. "Finish them off with the axe," she told him coldly, "so that it looks like a robbery." It was a chilling directive that would seal their fates forever. Salim, obedient and determined to follow through, arrived at the house under the cover of darkness. Armed with the hatchet, he made his way through the silent rooms, ensuring no one was left alive. The brutal scene that unfolded was beyond imagination. 7 lives were taken that night in an act of unthinkable betrayal and greed. What had started as forbidden love had now turned into one of the most horrifying crimes the village had ever witnessed. Neither Shabnam nor Salim realized that their heinous actions would leave scars that the community and the nation would remember for years to come. After Shabnam's chilling confession, the final moments of that fateful night unfold in the most gruesome way. Following their agreement, Shabnam and Salim attacked their unsuspecting family members, mercilessly slashing their throats with the axe. One by one, 6 lives were extinguished, and the house fell eerily silent. Once the bloodshed was complete, Salim quietly left the scene, leaving Shabnam alone in the house. The horrors of that night, however, were far from over. Just minutes after Salim's departure, Shabnam discovered that her 10-month-old nephew, Arsh, was still alive. Panicked, Shabnam called Salim to inform him of the situation. But this time, Salim refused to return, telling her to handle it herself. His chilling detachment left Shabnam to complete the monstrous task alone. In an unspeakable act of cruelty, she approached her infant nephew and pressed her hands around his tiny neck. Unable to resist, the child succumbed to death. The silence in the house was now absolute. 7 lives had been brutally taken, 6 at the hands of Salim and Shabnam, and the last, an innocent child, by Shabnam herself. With the truth laid bare, Shabnam and Salim were arrested shortly after the investigation pieced together their involvement. The police wasted no time in filing a comprehensive case against the 2 lovers, charging them with multiple counts of premeditated murder. The nation watched in shock as the trial began in the district court. The courtroom proceedings were long and emotionally charged as the prosecution presented Compelling evidence, including Shabnam's call records, her confession, and Salim's testimony. The court found both guilty, and the judgment was unrelenting. Shabnam and Salim were sentenced to death. Refusing to accept their fate, Shabnam and Salim appealed to the Allahabad High Court, hoping for a reprieve. However, their hopes were shattered as the High Court upheld the death penalty, agreeing with the district court's judgment. Desperate, the duo escalated their case to the Supreme Court of India. Yet again, the courts delivered the same verdict, affirming that their crimes were among the rarest of the rare, deserving the ultimate punishment. The public, still grappling with the horrors of the case, saw justice unfolding step by step. With no relief from the courts, Shabnam turned to the last resort, a mercy petition. She submitted appeals to the governor of Uttar Pradesh and the president of India pleading for clemency, but her pleas fell on deaf ears. Both petitions were rejected, and by 2021, all avenues of legal relief had been exhausted. For the first time in the history of independent India, it appeared that a woman, Shabnam, would be executed by hanging. Preparations for her execution at Rampur jail began, further intensifying the public's interest in the case. However, even as her execution loomed, Shabnam made another desperate attempt to escape the gallows. She filed yet another petition with the governor of Uttar Pradesh, pleading for mercy. This time, the petition was forwarded to the Uttar Pradesh government for review. Months passed without a final decision, leaving Shabnam's fate in limbo. As of today, she remains on death row in Rampur jail, awaiting the government's verdict. Meanwhile, Salim is serving his sentence in Naini jail in Prayagraj, far from the woman for whom he claimed he had committed the murders. Amidst the courtroom drama and legal battles, another shocking detail emerged during the investigation. In 2008, shortly after her arrest, Shabnam underwent a routine medical examination. The results revealed an unexpected twist. Shabnam was 2 months pregnant. The revelation sparked even more debate and speculation about her motivations, further complicating an already horrifying case. To this day, Shabnam's story continues to haunt the collective conscience of the nation, a tale of love, betrayal, and unimaginable cruelty. During the peak of their relationship, Shabnam and Salim not only shared an emotional bond, but also developed a physical one. This led to Shabnam becoming pregnant before her arrest. While in prison, she gave birth to a son who spent the first 6 years of his life behind bars with his mother. The young boy's future seemed uncertain until Saifi, an old friend from Shabnam's college days, stepped forward to adopt him. Saifi, who had shared a warm camaraderie with Shabnam during their student years, took this decision as a way of repaying a debt of gratitude. Saifi recalled how Shabnam had once helped him in his moment of need. During their college days, Saifi faced severe financial troubles, which nearly forced him to drop out. Knowing Shabnam's kind and generous nature, he approached her for help, and she willingly paid his fees, ensuring he could continue his education. Deeply moved by her selflessness, Saifi adopted Shabnam's son, vowing to raise him like his own children. Over the years, Saifi has fulfilled that promise, providing the boy with love, care, and a stable upbringing. Today, Shabnam's son is 15 years old and lives a life far removed from the shadows of his mother's crimes. As Shabnam's death penalty continues to loom large, her son has publicly appealed for clemency, pleading with the authorities to reduce her sentence to life imprisonment. His emotional plea has once again brought Shabnam's case into the spotlight, sparking debates on justice, mercy, and the future of her family. While the courts and the government deliberate her fate, the story of Shabnam's son stands as a testament to resilience and hope amidst tragedy. The final decision in this